Hey everyone, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Jen, and welcome to Devilish Bookworms, the podcast.
where we read and review books and release episodes every Tuesday.
This week we have Grave Matter by Karina Halle.
Yay!
Sydney Denik had no idea what she was in for when she wins a coveted spot at the Madrona Foundation. Now that the ties to her old life have been severed, she won't let anything stand in the way of her goal to find a cure for Alzheimer's. That is, until she begins having terrifying experiences on the property. The more time Sydney spends on the compound, the more secrets and ghosts come to light. When her nightmares and reality begin to blend together, her devastatingly handsome psychologist may be the only one that can help her find out the truth. With everything Madrona has to offer, Sydney will have to decide if the mission is worth risking her sanity and her life.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
The trigger warnings for grave matter are gore, body horror, animal, creature body horror, off page animal death, mentions of suicide, visions of suicide, talk of Alzheimer's, loss of parents and parental figures, grief, difficulties with being neurodivergent, uneven power dynamics, graphic language, graphic adult content.
Yes. And let me tell you, you kind of get the creepy vibes from the cover, but it's so beautiful. It's like a
Oh, the
beautiful
cover's
gore.
so pretty.
It really is.
Beautiful gore.
Well, it is because it's like you got the skull, but you got the fun guy. Haha. Not the skull, but the
The
fun
fun
guy.
guy.
Ah, sorry. Okay, I just have to say that there's a lot of fungus or fun guy kind of commentary and jokes, and I live for it. So I had to make a joke about it.
Yeah, especially from one of the grad students.
Oh my God, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
I love, I know that I don't want to spend too much time on the cover, but like those colors, you have the teals and the pinks and the orange underneath the mushroom. It's beautiful.
I'm not gonna lie, the colors actually are what attracted me to the cover and kept having to scroll back to see what is this book about because it just draws you in.
What is this book about? Mushrooms.
Facts. Lots of facts about mushrooms.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that Karina did her research and she's proud of her research. And I'm proud of her for doing her research. But if you ever thought, um, where can I find the most information I've ever wanted to know about mushrooms or fungi? It's this book.
Yeah, this book for sure.
For sure.
It really was actually great that she did so much research. I mean, you could tell it was well thought out and well like considered about every detail about different fungi. But
Yeah. This book, so in the beginning, I have to be honest, in the beginning, it was a little rough for me to get into. I don't think I really got hooked until like chapter 7 or something. When they found the grave, that's where I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Not that the rest of it wasn't, it was just, I gloss over things and I tried really hard not to. But like with a bunch of facts, um, you know, uh, Sydney had things going on in her head. I have things going on in my head. They manifest differently. Jen, you have things going on in your head that also manifests differently. But unfortunately, that's one of mine.
I understand that because, like you said, it was a little rough. Not, it wasn't rough. It was a lot of information in the beginning, and it was a lot of scientific information in the beginning. So
Mm-hmm.
it made it a little more difficult to kind of entrap you right away. But as you said, like once you get to the graveyard instance, you start forgetting about the scientific names of the mushrooms, and you go into how is that affecting every person here. And then you start really getting really into the book.
Yeah. Um, which I feel like a lot of people are really going to enjoy, like the foundation, right? Um, with me, it was there was a lot of like new kid in class vibes, and I was like, okay, well, I want to get to like the actual story. So, but we did. So we got through the new kid in class vibes, and then we got to the actual story. Um, and I had theories. This was one of those books where you have like theories really, really, really early on. Jen, you did any of your theories come true?
Um, Actually, like a couple of them kind of did. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had a few instances where I was like, okay, this is gonna cause this to happen, or this person isn't going to exactly be who we thought they were. And towards the end, I was like, yep, I was right about that. But there was like there was one thing that I didn't actually pick up on. And I was kind of like, oh, huh, that that's an interesting twist. But yeah.
Yeah, the ending does for sure have twists. There were some things that I was like, oh, I bet this happened. And then it kind of did, but not at all in the way that I thought it was going to. And it's funny because the beginning of the book, I had all these thoughts. I was like kind of a little bit more critical. But then at the end of the book, when the end of the book came, it was almost like maybe I was wrong in my assessment. Or even if I wasn't wrong, it all came full circle. Um, and it kept you guessing for sure.
Yeah, because even with the information that you have, the pieces fit together, but you just don't exactly know how. So, yeah, this whole section belongs to this one particular piece of the jigsaw puzzle, but you haven't found the pattern yet. And then once the end comes in, you're like, oh, snap. Okay, this is how it all fits together. And it makes perfect sense.
All of it except one thing, and I have to talk to you about it afterwards because I was literally like I was literally just sitting there earlier and I was like, wait a second. If XYZ, then how does ABC? But it's
Oh,
literally like the smallest thing.
I can't wait.
It's the smallest thing. I really love how Karina was able to um write the feeling. It's very like gothy, like they're in like a magical forest. There's a lot of scenes, and like one of the scenes is in the middle of the night with a candle, and like she's running down the hallway and
I gotta say, it was giving major Twilight vibes, Forks vibes, you know what I mean?
what you mean saturated in blue filter.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely positively.
Oh my goodness. So, the one thing I really want to bring up with this book was her representation of ADHD. I have to
Mm-hmm.
say, she did flawless with this because I thought I actually felt seen. Some of my mannerisms and, just how my fucking brain works, I felt like I was understood. Hyperfixation and just the fact that
Yes.
when it out of sight, out of mind, like that is the actual thing. Like if I don't see it in front of me or it is not a constant in my life, I will forget about it. It's like it never happened. So I love that she kind of tied that in with grief because of the fact that it was like yes, I love the family members that I have and the family members that I've lost, but the way that I process grief is so much different from a quote unquote normal human, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't fixate on it. Like, because once they're gone, like, yes, I think about them. I have my memories of them, but I don't suffer in silence like
Mm-hmm.
most people do.
Well, they
And
could just be at the store, or they could just be out of town. Is kind of how I feel it.
yeah, I was gonna say my brain puts it in a perspective that they're fine, they're okay. So I don't need to be upset or cry or to, mourn the loss of them. They're still with me. Just they're just not right in front of me, you know? I don't know if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah.
I think my biggest problem with the FMC was I feel like that there were some times where she reacted um without thinking, which is not like necessarily specific to ADHD, but like I said, sometimes things manifest differently, right? So like
Oh yeah.
with me, I gather like a ton of information first and then I react. And there were times where she was like hitting people in the head with fire extinguishers. And I'm like, can you just listen to the words coming out of their mouths first? But I know that that was something that like she did, you know. So a lot of people will take an FMC or any character actually, and they'll be like judging them off of things that they don't experience, you know, and I don't
Mhm.
experience things that way. So it would be easy for me to be like, well, that was dumb. And I kind of did. But then even in the book, she was like, I mean, I feel like I may have overreacted. And I'm like, I get you, girl. Like, I get you.
Well, and I think that, we all have those moments of just like instant reaction. With this book, I feel like we got like so many different perspectives, and well, maybe not even perspectives, but we've got so many different characters showing so many different traits and personality ticks. And then you have like an overbearing MMC, then you have a flighty FMC that just like doesn't want to just stop and think. She just wants to do. And it was a lot, but at the end, like, it was so gratifying to see the outcome though.
So let's talk about that MMC for a second. Um, so Sydney comes and she's at the institute or whatever, and she sees this this broody like all dressed in dark clothes, but dressed well. And how could you not fall for him? You know what I mean? How did you feel about him as an MLC?
I wasn't mad at it. Okay, I think the only thing that bugged me about him was the fact he was very like, I don't want to sound wrong, but he was very emotional for being a broody man. Like, don't get me wrong, I love when men show their emotions, but I feel like he was coming on a little too strong, too quickly.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then he just wanted to share feelings. And I'm like, whoa, sir, sir, calm down. Like, feelings are just a little much that soon.
You know what's so funny is I felt the opposite. I think he
Really?
held off plenty. I felt he held
Okay.
off plenty.
Okay. See,
You
this
know how
is
much
where
I
I
love when
love.
we disagree.
I was just gonna say, I love when there's a difference. I love this.
Yeah. I felt like he tried, and I felt like that added to his broodiness. Um, but I don't know, man. There's something I love that passionate, you know what I mean? Like that there was something almost Dracula about him, like Gary Oldman Dracula about his character. You know what's funny is I was on Karina's Instagram and she had this picture up, and it was Michael Fassbender on like one side, and then like some blonde chick. I don't know who she was on the other side. And I'm assuming they fit kind of the vibe that she described in the books. And then also she had a picture that was drawn for her. It was commissioned art. Um, and he was like dark haired and all this stuff. I pictured him completely different. I pictured him as kind of like I pictured him as having white hair. First of all, don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know where that came from, but I'm not mad at the Michael Fassbender. Like, kind of, kind of like that. But I don't know where this dark white hair came from. Not like older gentleman because he was only like 37, but more, I guess, more like the Witcher vibes, but short and spiky.
Huh. Okay, I did not picture him as Michael Fassbender. Like, not even close.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of pictured him. I'm trying to think how I could describe the body of Rio, you know.
Skinny.
Well, kind of skinny but
He was
muscular.
cut, but he was kind of skinny.
Oh, well, okay, bigger arms, but but with like a kind of early Clark Kent face, like old school Superman.
I was gonna say like Henry Cavill or like Christopher
Yeah.
Reeves.
No, Henry Cavill. I couldn't remember his name. I'm sorry.
Not mad at that a little bit.
I didn't picture him as big, but kind of like in between him and Rio. Those nice
Okay.
arms.
I picked up what you're putting down. Um, so
Yeah.
speaking of their relationship, so this was it was a pretty spicy book. I would say it was like a two and a half or three jalapenos.
Um, I would say probably two and a half, yeah. I don't think it
Yeah,
was like super spicy, but the spicy parts that were there were done well.
they were great.
Especially the boat one.
Which boat?
Either.
Any. So in this book, it was teacher student forced proximity, slow burn, which I love a slow burn. It just it just makes me feel a certain type of way, makes me blush. um, stalker obsessed hero, degradation, praise king, breath play, um, you know, ropes, belts, stuff like that.
Yeah. Just light BDSM. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very light.
You know what's funny is okay, I will say this. I will say the talking during situations did not fit the vibe to me.
It
It did
doesn't
not fit the
what?
vibe in my head. It
Oh,
didn't
okay.
fit the vibe in my head.
Okay. So I have to agree with you, except
Hmm.
for in the office. The office
Yeah.
scene is the only place that I found that gratifying.
Um, Not that it wasn't great, but it was almost like when he called her pet, that fit the vibe for me.
Yeah.
But when he called her other things, I was like,
Yeah.
where'd that come from?
It's hit and miss with me when it comes to other name calling
Hmm.
during,
Such as,
such as dirty little slut. You just wanted me to say it, I know. So, I mean, like things like that, it's hit and miss. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, well, did he just go there? Okay, then. But other times I'm like, ah, no, we could do without that. And I think this was one of those moments where it wasn't bad, but I could have done without it.
Mm-hmm.
But Pet definitely was good.
Yeah, I was a fan of that.
I was also a fan of her going, "Yes, doctor."
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Um, okay, so other than the devastatingly handsome Mr. Kincaid, did you have any favorite characters?
Um, Actually, yes, I did. Manoir was one of them, and I didn't mind Lauren, but she wasn't my favorite at all because if she was her friend, she would have no. There was a lot of things that Lauren did that pissed me off. So,
Ooh.
no, thank you.
Gotcha.
What about you?
Um, I think mine, okay, don't judge me. Okay? Don't judge me. So, other than Wes, because of course, Wes, not only of course, Wes, I think Wes is my favorite main male character of anything I've ever read.
Okay.
Let's sit with that for a second. Um,
I'm
absolute perfection.
okay.
And you and I can talk about that a little bit more later because we can't talk about it on episode. Um, I'm telling you, there's that Gary Oldman Dracula comparison. I just anyway. Um,
Mhm.
and I like him a little bit more emotional, but Broody, anyway. So other other than Mr. Wes Kincaid, um, don't judge me. I really liked the I really liked the mountain lion. The one that said friend. Do you
The
remember?
the the mountain
The,
lion.
the cougar.
You are my favorite human. Like what is your life right now? I love you, but the cougar.
I loved him.
Oh my God, I love
You
you.
needed
The
him.
oh, oh my God. Yep. So
Okay. Yeah.
I we're gonna talk about that later.
He was on the page for like 4 paragraphs. He's my favorite. She just needed someone in that moment. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, what was your favorite quote?
Um, well, after that, I mean, I don't know. It might have been the end. No, I'm just kidding. Um, ooh, my favorite quote was, I don't see how I'll ever stop being too much for someone. Too impulsive, too brash, too reckless, too self-centered, too cold, too sensitive, too much, too me. And I resonate with that a lot.
Yep,
So,
I highlighted that one too.
ah,
Yep.
but there was one other that I had, and it was because that's all there is. The past doesn't exist anymore. Only now and tomorrow is what does. And I want you now and tomorrow. And I thought that was adorable.
Hmm.
What about you?
That. Bro, I don't even know. I literally highlighted so many quotes, so many. Like, there's one I often think of grief as a cycle from which there is no escape, an Ouroboros, a snake of sorrow eating its tail.
Mm,
Um,
I
and then
remember that one.
there's one part where they're talking about how they can get rid of, like, completely eradicate ADHD completely. And she's like, wait, I don't want to completely eradicate it. Like, yeah, sure, it's really rough for some people. Some people think it's a superpower, but like, we take medicine to kind of control it, but it's if you get rid of it, then you're getting rid of a piece of you completely. And it's something that hit with me a certain type of way. And I'll explain you, Jen, later, but I don't want to give people the wrong idea because I do think that some people do really need medication. But I would hate to completely erase parts of me. You know what I mean? Like to completely get rid of something that makes you you. Um, anyway, a lot of times, a lot of the things that I highlighted are when she's flirting with Wes because I thought they were just funny. She goes, um, his mouth looks like he's holding back secrets. And then she says in a different one, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but she goes, "You're a neurosurgeon." Somehow he got even sexier.
I'm not gonna lie, there was a part where she asked if he was gonna take his shirt off, and he says, "While I'm cooking bacon, of all things, I
Mm.
like inflicting punishment, not taking it." I was like, "Ooh, sir."
Mm. Dr. Kincaid. uh, anyway, uh, so I loved this book and I would recommend it. I didn't, full transparency, I'm really sorry. I didn't think I was going to, but I ended up really, really loving it.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, if you do read this, stick with it through the first few chapters, uh, because it's so worth the end. It is so worth the end. Yes, you gotta kind of climb through all the scientific data, but it's so worth it.
Yes. Grave Matter was written by Karina Halle. Halle is a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today bestselling author. She has over 70 titles under her belt, and they can all be found at her website, authorkarinahalle.com. That's AuthorKarinahalle.com. She's also on Instagram and Threads at Author Halle. Her Instagram is gorgeous and she's such a lovely person. So I would say go check her out. Jen, what are we reading next week?
Next week, we are reading Bonded Nightmare by E.M. Rinaldi.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Devilish Bookworms.
If you want to chat with us, be sure to check us out on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
You can also find our podcast on YouTube and wherever else you listen to podcasts.
We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.